We're joined by J.R. Robbins, managing editor of NRAHuntersRights.org. J.R., thanks for being with us here on Cam & Company, NRA News. Let's talk about an op-ed piece that you wrote about a former Maryland DNR advisor opposing efforts to help a veterans hunt. What is going on here, J.R.?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, John. What's going on here is that a fellow named Joseph Lamp, who was a former member of the Maryland DNR Wildlife Advisory Commission, and that's an advisory position only. He does not have regulatory authority. He wrote an opinion piece in the Baltimore Sun criticizing the efforts of a couple of Maryland men who have been working very hard for a number of years to offer hunting trips to wounded veterans. They've been doing it for about 6 years now. They had been working with disabled civilians to do the same thing for a while, and the idea just occurred to them to work with military veterans. So they contacted Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and they connected them with 30 veterans who came out to hunt on their first year. That was about 6 years ago, and now there's about 20 such events going on in Maryland each year because of these two guys. Now, Joseph Lamp, this former DNR wildlife advisor, wrote an opinion piece saying, quote, "Teaching wounded veterans to kill innocent white-tailed deer with bows and arrows is inhumane and should stop." And he further said, how can soldiers returning with PTSD, lost limbs, lost confidence, and lost buddies heal their own physical and psychological wounds by inflicting pain and suffering on defenseless animals? Well, this is just an anti-hunting rant, and he's using wounded warriors to his advantage. And I don't know who appointed him the national spokesperson for wounded warriors, but if you look at the number of people offering these hunts for wounded veterans, the demand is very, very clear. There's dozens of people doing it. There's dozens of organizations doing it. There's dozens of outdoor writers doing it. It obviously gives these veterans a sense of accomplishment, a sense of getting something in their normal lives back. And for this man to denigrate this kind of effort is just absurd.
JR, here on NRA News, we do lots of interviews with groups like this. Freedom Hunters is the one that comes to mind that we talk. Anthony Pace, we talk to a lot. And to a person, every time we do one of these interviews, sometimes they can't even get through the interview because they're so emotional about the experiences that they have and what they have given to these heroes, these men and women. And they're also so prideful of the job that they do, and there seems to be such a needed, wanted, desired, and effective activity for Mr. Lamp to be so against something like this. It's kind of shocking.
Well, in the piece I wrote for the Out There Wire, I just said it defies understanding because everything you said is true. This is intensely emotional. You cannot talk to these people, hunt with these people, or read about what they've been through, number one, without realizing they have sacrificed an enormous amount for your freedom and for Mr. Lamp's freedom, by the way, and to see the effort they put into hunting. They don't want a lot of help. The fact that they have two artificial legs doesn't matter. They want to get in the tree stand by themselves. They want this independence back. They want this sense of accomplishment back. They want this sense of their lives can be normal a little bit again. They want that back. It is just impossible to be with these people and not feel something on a very deep level. But because he's talking about doing away with hunting in Maryland, let's talk about a couple of things that would happen if you did that. Maryland has about 230,000 deer. Maryland bow hunters alone kill about 27,000 deer a year, and that's pretty significant to wildlife management. Farmers lose in the neighborhood of $38 million a year in crop losses just to deer just in Maryland. Maryland had 35,675 deer automobile collisions last year. Maryland is usually in the top 10 states for the incidence of Lyme disease. So if this fella gets his way and somehow eliminates deer hunting, all that gets worse. This is what's going on right now with deer hunting. You stop deer hunting for 1 year, and every one of those problems is compounded. So from a wildlife management standpoint, we have to have hunting. Bow hunting is a big part of that. Wounded warriors want to do this. Nobody's forcing them. A lot of people are spending a lot of volunteer time and effort to make it happen. What in the world could be wrong with this?
JR, you're talking there about Maryland and Mr. Lamp in particular. Talk about, is there a Joseph Lamp in other states that have deer problems, that have amazing numbers of collisions between automobiles and deer?
Well, deer problems are kind of, particularly in the suburbs, we're seeing a lot of communities nationwide seeing so many deer crop up in the suburbs and urban areas that a lot of town councils and small suburban areas are looking at deer hunts. Maybe it's a bow hunt only, maybe it's a shotgun only season. And invariably, these are really important because invariably anti-hunting groups will come out and say, oh, you can't do this. This is going to be a safety problem. We're going to have hunters, absolutely shooting people. And in the meantime, deer are causing widespread damage in automobile collisions, in residential shrubbery losses, and obviously it's a problem to the deer herd themselves. Fairfax County, where NRA is located,
here in Virginia,
has something in the neighborhood of 300 deer per square mile. Well, a healthy deer density is about 20 deer per square mile.
Oh, wow.
So, the Fairfax County government has worked with a couple of bow hunting groups over the years to try and call those numbers down, but they always get resistance from anti-hunting groups. So the short answer is yes, we see this problem a lot. We see it particularly focused on deer because they're the most problematic species.
Talking to J.R. Robbins, he is the managing editor of NRAHuntersRights.org. And J.R., when you said these quotes, and I'm reading them myself, that what this gentleman said, this guy, teaching wounded warriors to kill innocent white-tailed deer with bows and arrows is humane and should stop, and it's no way to help veterans recover. I was outraged, but this is more personal for you because you in your op-ed piece, you say you grew up hunting in Maryland, and this guy was representing an advisory position, the Maryland DNR. He's got to be so not only anti-hunting, JR, but so out of touch with what hunting is really all about.
Well, absolutely, and yes, without making this too personal, I did grow up hunting in Maryland. I had a great time in a lot of different parts of the state. I still do. But to have this guy in some sort of an advisory capacity, and I believe he was a governor-appointed position, which is possibly another problem. But, he's just totally out of touch with what the people in Maryland need and what wildlife management is all about. And for him to be a wildlife advisor is just does not make sense.
Jay, before we let you go, one last question, not about this topic, but last week, a little longer than last week, out there in California, the California Game and Fish Commission removed Dan Richards, who was the commissioner.
Yeah.
And they did so because he went to Idaho and killed a mountain lion, which is a legal activity in Idaho.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, doing a legal activity in Idaho is very frowned upon in Sacramento.
Well,
and they got rid of him.
I'm glad you brought this up because this is another problem, and we have covered this on NRA Hunters' Rights as well. Anti-hunting sentiment in California is pretty well documented. There's a lot of it. It's been growing for a long time. But the anti-hunting groups, especially the Humane Society of the United States, actually seem to be making some inroads and gaining some influence with policy. Now, this is very scary, and there's a bill in place right now, SB 1221, that would ban the use of dogs for bear hunting and bobcat hunting. Well, and it's very close to passing, and it's...
JR, why do the people who are for that bill say they need that?
They say it's pretty much inhumane. Which is, there are a lot of states that allow bear hunting with dogs, and
but what's inhumane about it? Devil's advocate, I don't understand. What's
their
position
is that the dogs chase the bear up in a tree, and it's hard on the dogs, and it's not sporting because the hunter can just waltz up there and shoot the bear when it's treed.
Right.
Well, the reality is that it's intensely grueling. It is not, hard on the it's hard on the dogs, but the owners are very good to the dogs and raise them very carefully. And you talk to a guy who owns a bear hound, and believe me, you don't want to do anything that threatens that dog. Right. But it's, wildlife researchers also rely heavily on bear hounds to do their work too. If you're trying to tag a bear, well, you've got to get a hold of him, even trank him, so dogs can help you do that. But I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 57 bear hound hunters in the state, and California's been trying to expand bear hunting in that state for several years, particularly around San Luis Obispo. Right. But animal rights sentiment has just been backing them off. The game department is saying, well, okay, we're going to reevaluate the bear management plan now. So bottom line is that they're being influenced heavily by anti-hunting groups, and that is a very, very bad sign. We've done a couple of stories on this on the website, and I would encourage people to go there and take a look at it. But that bill hasn't passed yet, but it's doing better than we would like it to see, and it's definitely not good, and it's not going to stop there. If the antis win this bill, They're not going to stop there. If they lose this bill, they'll find some other edge of hunting to chip away at.
So, JR, if a listener or a viewer to the show right now is thinking of spending their tourism dollars somewhere and they want to go hunt somewhere, would you encourage them to go to California to show that this is a popular activity, or would you encourage them to go somewhere else because California discourages it?
Well, I would encourage them to go where they want, but I would certainly encourage them to contact the California Game Commission, California Department of Fish and Game, and tell them what they think about the value of wildlife management to wildlife in the state. I think that's the main thing. Hunting is a wildlife management tool. We need hunting for the North American model of wildlife management. That's how it works. That's how it benefits wildlife. If you stop hunting, as we talked about examples, what would happen in Maryland, similar things would happen all over the country. But, I want hunters to hunt where they want to and where they can, and tell California what they think of the importance of hunting in that state.
I think the phrase "tell California what you think" is said a lot for many topics, JR.
Yeah, I think we get a lot of mileage out of it.
Yeah. J.R. Robbins, managing editor of NRA huntersrights.org, that is. That's how you look it up on the internet, NRA huntersrights.org. J.R., thank you for being with us now and always with this great material as we're looking at these kind of issues here with hunting and sportsmen, and you've got it all covered. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, John.